Welcome to the Notorious Scoundrels, a Star Wars Legion podcast bringing you the latest news, general perspective, and competitive discussion.
Hello and welcome back to the Notorious Scoundrels podcast. I'm Kyle. I'm here with Mike and David and Zach. How you guys doing?
I'm going to leave that one up to Mike to respond to.
I'm doing fantastic. It is Monday, in which I knew it was Monday today, so that's an increase in how I'm feeling. I also made it to round 3 in single eliminations in Invader League, so I'm feeling good.
Yeah, congrats on that. So that is the round of 16. Yeah. I am also. I gotta play either Luke Cook or Jace. Whoever wins that game, both of whom are running an identical Rockstar list.
I guess you know what list you're going to play.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that'll be fun. We'll talk about those games, Mike and my games later. Did you guys see the gameplay previews for that Squadrons video game? I know this is not Legion related, but
are you really asking me this question, Kyle? You're asking the guy who put it into Discord chat and was hype like 20 times in a row.
I mean, I know that you saw the previews. It's a rhetorical device to get us to talk about Squadrons.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify your statement. Yes, I am pumped.
Okay. I also saw it. I'm not like a huge flight game guy, but man, it looked freaking awesome. I mean, it looks kind of like Overwatch, but Star Wars with starfighters.
Right? Overwatch, right? Oh, okay.
I mean, you guys have all played Rogue Squadron, right?
No.
I played X-Wing versus TIE Fighter.
Oh my god! All right, well, David, at least you're one step closer to victory. But
okay,
guys, what are you doing here? We are all Star Wars nerds, and you guys haven't played Rogue Squadron. You guys can go, I'm pretty sure, on Steam or Origin and download Rogue Squadron for $5, and it is excellent. But yeah, this is the successor to Rogue Squadron, and I saw the original video trailer, and I was like, okay, I want to get excited for this, but I want to see the gameplay. And then they came out with the gameplay, and I was like, all right, we can do this. I've got a VR headset. I'm going to have to buy a new throttle and joystick, I think. Hopefully it's throttle and joystick capable. I don't know if you guys ever played a game with the a throttle and joystick before, but I used to play a game called Falcon 4.0, which is where you flew F-16s in the Korean War, and it was sick. It was very realistic. I'm pretty sure the military used it to train their pilots. But anyways, ever since I've played with a joystick and a throttle, I really want to play with it again. And this looks like a game that is capable of that. So
yeah, if it only has controller support and not joystick and throttle support, I'll be extremely disappointed. That's actually one of the reasons I didn't dive into the EA Battlefront games right away, was because it didn't have that support available for the space portions of the game. But this game is all about the squadrons. I mean, they can't possibly release this game without support for flight stick. No way.
I would think, I think a lot of people are going to be clamoring for it, and the fact that you can put on a VR headset, have the real tools in front of you, and look around in the cockpit, that's total immersion. It's about total's maybe not the right word, but it's very close to it.
That might be the only way I could play it, honestly. I tried to fly the ships in Battlefront 2 when I played it very briefly, and when I say I'm terrible at it, I'm borderline. I put it on, I go out there. Let's say I'm in an X-Wing. I take a couple shots, then I get blasted off the table 10 times in a row, and I'm like, all right, we're going back to the normal game, boys. I can't do it. So maybe maybe with the contraptions you're talking about, because I'm not gonna lie, I thought I was a video gamer, but I'm so out of sync now. But the VR, and maybe if I can actually fly rather than use a controller, I might have better handle on the situation. Otherwise, it might look like Baby Yoda took over the Mandalorian ship. So,
I bet he could fly the Razor Crest very, very well. I'm just willing to say.
With that being said, in your defense, Zach, the Starship stuff in Battlefront 2 sucks. So,
All right, I feel better now. Thank God.
yeah. I mean, so the
Yeah.
issue is that it's built on the Battlefield engine, I'm pretty sure, and flying stuff in Battlefield outside of helicopters has never been good.
I'm awful at those two.
Yeah,
Like I would just like I was such an infantry guy in Battlefield. So if anytime someone's like, "Oh, let's hop in the chopper," I'm just like, "Nah, I'm good, fam. I don't want any piece of this."
I mean, the
Chopper
last like
plane, none of it.
the last like aircraft game I played was War Thunder, which was, again, you fly with a mouse and keyboard. It just, people are using like flight sticks because they do the maneuvers that completely slice and dice you. Like there's no comparison, I think, between the kinds of stuff you can pull off with a flight stick and a throttle versus the mouse and keyboard. I'm willing to say. So like, why not come to the why not get the right tool for the job and just have the flight stick and throttle?
Totally. So part of me thinks we should get on topic. However, I want to introduce, since we're talking about flight sims, have you guys ever heard of Descent Free Space?
Yes.
No.
Negative.
So Descent Free Space is, in my opinion, the best flight sim of all time. It is set like 200 years in the future, where like the Earth is now known as like the Galactic Terran Alliance, and you're just like a pilot on like a Star Destroyer essentially, and it's totally narratively driven. It is amazing if you're into like flying stuff generally. It is the best. Descent Free Space and Descent Free Space 2 are two of the most amazing games I have ever played. Highly recommend. They actually hold up pretty well due to time. Both of these games I think were released in like early 2000s. Like I think Descent Free Space 2 might have been like 2003 or something.
I looked it up on Wikipedia, 2001.
Yeah,
But I was trying to figure out if it was from the same studio that did the original Descent game, whether they had any relationship. And yeah, it's in the same universe, right? Because I remember playing the original Descent, which was, you fly through a cavern and you fight, AI monsters and things like that. But I didn't know they had like a space, like an interstellar war version of that game.
Yeah, it is excellent. It is the most immersive flight sim I've ever played. So highly recommend. Check it out. It's probably, I think it's like $5 on Steam, and it's even pretty good with just a keyboard.
Yeah,
but
actually,
it's
even earlier.
Compatible.
It's 1998. That's how early
Yeah.
it was.
But like honestly, the graphics hold up really well, and it's got this like whole modding community behind it that has like completely reskinned the game. Like I'm sure everybody that's listening to this podcast is super into Star Wars, but they've reskinned this game. There's a version of it called Beyond the Red Line, and they've reskinned the whole thing into Battlestar Galactica, and
Nice.
you can like fly Vipers in with like real physics.
Or you could just download TIE Fighter on DOSBox and play that too.
Yeah.
I don't want to run your prey, man, because that sounds super fun. But I really think there's nothing is going to beat TIE Fighter and X-Wing Rebel Alliance.
I promise you, buy this game. I will buy it for you, and you will change your mind.
Okay.
And
Absolutely.
before Kyle gets us back on track, which I'm sure he's dying to do, the one thing I did notice in that trailer is that Hera, I believe, is in it, which is cool to see her continue her showing
I don't
up.
think that was Hera.
Come on, you don't think so?
I think you are profiling.
Come on.
Was it Hera in an X-Wing or Hera in an A-Wing? Because she's in both.
Well,
in the
she's
cartoon
standing.
show.
She's standing by a table, and it's hard to tell if it's her or not. You just kind of assume that it's her because she's a pilot in the Alliance, standing by a table, doing some general stuff. But you know what, Mike's saying it. I'm going for the Twilight profiling, so we're gonna go back onto topic here. So what do we got for housekeeping this week, Kyle?
Well, we got 3x3 mats on pre-order. We have actual games in stock, so check those out. Not Star Wars games, unfortunately, but other stuff. And we also got hobby items in stock. You need some flock or something, you can buy it at thefifthtrooper.com. Also, you should be, if you ordered some Scoundrels tokens, you should be getting those soon-ish, this week, somewhere in there. I've already seen some pictures people have posted of getting them, so yeah, I think that's it for housekeeping. Did I miss anything?
No, I think
No, I
that
don't
was
think so.
mostly it. I just would like to, on our store, we've got Bolt Action, Blood Red Skies, Cruel Seas, Oak and Iron, and the Elder Scrolls, just to be specific.
There you go. Specificity is good.
Yeah. So, if you're interested in any of those things, please check it out. I know a lot of stores are probably down for the count at the moment. If you need stuff, we'll get it shipped out to you. We've been pretty good with shipping, I think, generally over the past couple of months. So,
Yep.
Please support us. We appreciate it. And yeah.
Yep. All right. Let's hit that news drop.
Sweet.
Welcome to In the News.
So I saw some photos of Cad Bane and Padme, like in the flesh, in the plastic rather, from Europe somewhere. Is it like Poland? Is that where they've randomly been released? Do you guys know anything specific about this?
I don't know anything about it, but what I do know is that I can't even get my hands on Cassian. So
Yeah, same here. I can't get Cassian and K2S. I've been dying to paint them.
Oh, geez, I didn't know that. I have Cassian. Sorry, guys. But yeah, I believe Poland. I think Evan was the first person to kind of tell us. I think he knew somebody over there that said Poland was getting them in, and then voila, they started popping up on the Facebook and the Discord. Actually, I think Killian Jung that had a couple posts on the blog actually got it. So that means Germany must have it as well, because I'm pretty sure he's based in Germany. So Europe's getting them quite early, about a month early, give or take.
yeah, I guess we're all just gonna have to move to, Europe. We gotta fast track the Legion, or we're gonna have to set up like Fifth Trooper Light over there so that they can like ship us stuff.
Well, what's funny is people were like, I can buy you one in a store and then ship it to you in the U.S. And there were responses be like, "Oh, that'd be great. How long does that take?" And they're like, "About 2 months."
You know what we need is a Fifth Trooper monorail at high speed from Jay's house to whatever store gets the earliest shipment for everything. And we're just gonna zoom over there and get what we can.
Well, I'm pretty much convinced at this point that we can pitch Jay anything and he'll try to do it. So why don't we just tell him to do that and see what happens?
High-speed monorail. Let's just ring up Elon Musk. I'm sure he'll be on that.
Yep, get the Boring Company involved.
Yeah, right.
Oh man, Jay and Elon in a meeting together, that'd be something to see. Oh man.
Yeah, so I think the TLDR there is some people have them, which means that soon-ish the rest of us will. That's the assumption anyway. They've been officially announced for July, the July release. So sometime in the next month we'll get them. ARCs and BXs have a date on the FFG website for August.
Yeah, I mean that's cool and all, but have not my trust in the Fantasy Flight Games dates on the website has never been high and continues to be that way. So.
Yeah, I mean they started in July for reference, so they're already pushed back to August. I mean, I'm assuming that this is just we're gonna see this happen to a lot of product, I think.
I mean, this is good news, right? We won't have to listen to people complain about ARC strike teams until at least August.
I mean, isn't the running joke that like the FFG boat has like a green stop maneuver or something. If you've ever played X-Wing, it means you can just hold in place for multiple turns. Like an X-Wing, you're not supposed to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So that's
I
kind of
mean,
the running joke.
I do know that, and I don't know which release this was, but there was like an entire shipping container that had like Brazil's Legion stuff on it, and it literally fell off the boat. And then, like, I don't know,
Yeah.
and South American listeners, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was Brazil, but there was like a South American country that literally didn't have any Legion stuff for 3 months because their container actually fell off a boat.
Oh wow.
Seems like something out of an Indiana Jones movie.
The thing about that is that, like, I bet you that happens way more often than you think.
Yeah, that's probably fair. And we just never hear about it or like even care about it. So you just
Yeah, I
like
mean-
don't even think about it.
I bet you there are hundreds, if not thousands, of cargo containers like sitting at the bottom of the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans, just like chilling there.
So here's the plan: we get an expedition together and we go look for the minis that were lost at sea, like buried treasure.
You think they're waterproof?
Well,
The containers?
unlikely, but we're gonna go. We're gonna go anyway, and we're gonna make a reality TV show out of it.
I thought you were going to go the other direction on that and say you wanted to go find the one where the arcs are and blow it up.
Yeah, that too. If they have our troopers on board, we'll just we'll dynamite those suckers.
Sink
Maybe
that
at the
ship!
bottom of the ocean is not enough.
The real question here is, I know the old plastic could, but can the new sprues hold up to pressure like a mile under the ocean?
We're gonna have
There's
to
only
test
one way
that
to find out.
Science.
Completely irrelevant question because there'd be no way to retrieve them. But
Stop derailing me with facts.
all right, well, that was a lovely news section. How about we? So we do actually have a Legion topic today. And that Legion topic we will hit right after our one. It's a 101 Legion topic.
There we go.
It's time for Legion 101. Class is in session.
All right, so actually Zach's gonna launch into this one.
I just want to note that we had 2 drops today, and Kyle didn't mess any of those up. He let the drops go through.
2 for 2.
Even queued them up.
Shoot them up.
The new
So yeah.
PR.
So normally Kyle's steering the ship, but I'm taking it over because we're talking about droids, and I'm not gonna lie to you. I have never played droids, and I don't know how to talk about them. So we're gonna go over some droids 101. As much as we can, we're gonna try to avoid some unreleased units that we're not sure about. And obviously, the first topic that we're gonna hit is the most important one, which is the expensive commanders, Dooku versus Grievous. It's been quite a discussion since droids dropped about how they only have these 2, commanders, and they're kind of anchored to them. And I think it's a good discussion just, to see where we think about both units here, how they play and function. And, I've seen Dooku lists and Grievous lists both be successful. So I think they're both strong units. So what do you guys think?
So I went through this. Let me just walk you briefly through my waffling process before Invader League single elim, because it was literally this choice. I mean, the short version is that it comes down to playstyle. Dooku is a defensive commander, and Grievous is an offensive one. Right? Like Grievous can get in there and make stuff happen. He can force a situation. Dooku is much better when you force your opponent to come into his threat area because he's not as fast or as mobile as Grievous. So the big differences, right? Advantages Grievous has over Dooku. He's cheaper. He's got more health. He has native relentless, and he has native scale. Those are the primary Grievous advantages. Dooku over Grievous, he has force powers, not insignificant. He has cunning, also not insignificant. His command cards are, in my opinion, significantly better. And he has more reliable damage on his attacks. So those are, as I see them, and better courage. those are the differences as I see them. What do you guys think?
I can't disagree with any of those points. They are factual. Um, I just think that force powers are probably preferable. I've sort of been on this ever since I played Dooku for the first time, and every time I see him play, I'm just kind of on this rant that I really think he's number one, if not number two, in terms of the force user hierarchy. He is very expensive, but he is also defensive because he doesn't have the free attack keywords like Grievous does. Um, I just think that, man, I just really like the Dooku's cards. I think they're just really all stars. Like they all do something very impactful. And under the right conditions, the 1-pip and the 2-pip are potentially game winning. Whether you brought Saber Throw to do the 1-pip combo or not, and plus the ability to strip tokens at the pivotal juncture is, it's almost a win condition when your opponent's bringing another similarly powerful force user. I mean, that's true to form, right? Like Dooku is, he's this arch duelist, right? And he's not supposed to lose one-on-one battles with Jedi. That's kind of his shtick, and Grievous, he has the Jedi Hunter keyword. He can do a lot of damage to Jedi, but similarly, he takes a lot of damage in return since he doesn't have access to force reflexes. I think only one of his cards gives him a dodge. And so he doesn't really have block all the time. And so he is quite a bit more vulnerable. And of course, he's also cowardly. So, he's susceptible to Jedi mind trick. I just think I just really prefer Dooku. I think Dooku's, he's got the higher courage value. He's got cunning, which is super handy. There are some situations where you don't want cunning, but you can just play standing orders and use your uplink and be completely fine. If you actually want to lose priority, you can just flex that way instead. And it costs you virtually nothing, just one uplink.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I think if like I knew that I was going to be dealing with some kind of aggressive melee threat like Tauntauns or Luke or another force user or something like that, I would bring Dooku. I think in almost any other situation, I'd probably still just want Grievous. The 30-point difference is not insignificant. That's essentially like an extra B1 heavy weapon. Like if I was picking a separatist list against like a gun line, like a clone gun line, I think I would run Grievous. Just because, I mean, if they can get in there, like Dooku can do way more damage, right? Between Force Choke and his, more reliable melee attack, and Fear, Surprise, Intimidation. It's worth highlighting like a important difference between Fear, Surprise, Intimidation and Train in Your Jedi Arts, because they're both kind of like quote unquote dive cards. Training Your Jedi Arts is mostly for the suppression, because none of his ranged attacks on that turn have Pierce. I mean, obviously the normal one you can make with his gun does, but like you're not gonna, if you dive into a clone ball with that, you're not gonna kill a lot of things, or at least any more things than you normally would just diving in there with his 2 lightsabers. Whereas Grievous with Dooku with Fear, Surprise, Intimidation, you've got 2 attacks, one melee, one ranged, both of which have Pierce, and then you also have Force Choke. So you're going to do more damage to like a clone ball with that card, and just in general with Dooku once you're in there. But I think Grievous gets in there a lot more easily, and I think the 30 points there is not insignificant in like a slugfest.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, as someone that plays clones, when I look across the table and I see Dooku, I don't like it, and when I see Grievous, I can kind of say, I can plan for it. But I kind of say that as an Obi-Wan player, right? I have to get kind of close to Dooku at some point, and I know that he has ways to kind of manage me more than I can manage him. And that kind of control on a commander, albeit an extra 30 points, is kind of important to have.
As a clone player, neither of your commanders scare me.
Because you have Overwatch?
Because you have 20 aim tokens?
But yeah, I mean, maybe. But I do think that I lean towards Dooku. I think Grievous has a lot of holes in his kit. I think his 2-pip and his 3-pip command cards might as well be blank most of the time.
Hang on.
The Supreme Commander is an exception, I think.
Supreme Commander is really good. Supreme Commander is grossly underrated.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. The only thing you want to really, I've seen it be used to like protect your units from like someone killing a unit leader or something, but I don't think it's very good. Like compared to Dooku's 2-pip, I don't think it's close.
Oh, sure, but I think like, I mean, it's a great card for its own purposes. Like you use it on your essentially on the turn, when you're entering that range 3 slugfest to kind of spread the damage around. You can protect, like if you've got BX droids, you can protect those. You can protect Grievous himself, right? It's kind of a reactive like setup card. He gets a bunch of free surges from it. It's also great. Grievous is not as good as Dooku in the Force user duel, but if you're getting dived by a Force user, you can Guardian Grievous in melee with B1s. So you can eat like a Son of Skywalker or something like that with Supreme Commander. I mean, like, because you just throw B1s in front of it, right? Like Luke kills like 6 B1s. Okay, but
I don't know. I mean, like, I sort of feel like if you get a Son of Skywalker and like you kill, I mean, if you kill 6 B1s and then put some wounds on Grievous and then like take a dodge token, I think that's fine.
So that noise in the background was General Grievous leaving the battlefield.
Yeah, there's his wheel bike and got the hell out of there.
So, which brings me to my next point is, if you're kitting them out and Grievous is ready to leave the battlefield because of suppression, how are you kitting them out? Like, I've seen a lot of people build Grievous with strict orders and endurance, or sometimes he'll have aggressive tactics. He has 2 command slots, correct?
He does.
Yes.
So sometimes he'll bring both. And then obviously Dooku, you're stapling push, choke, and then the long debate of reflexes versus force saber throw, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think?
I'm in saber throw is just a magical Christmas land camp, but I know that Kyle loves saber throw, so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if they were the same cost, it would be not a conversation. But saber throw is 5 points cheaper than reflexes, and 5 points is hard to come by these days. So
I also just want to say reflexes real quick, Kyle. Reflexes is also uniquely good on Dooku because he's generally going first, and so you'll almost always have value from reflexing.
Yeah, certainly in the later turns when you're playing those, 1 and 2 pips. I find that in the early turns it's not as useful because he's not going first, and then you also have a bridge turn where you can play his 3-pip and get the free dodge token. But yeah, you definitely get some mileage out of it, especially on your Fear, Surprise, Intimidation turn. But yeah, I like the flex that saber throw gives you. It's 5 points cheaper. If they were the same cost, I would take reflexes 10 times out of 10, but they're not. So yeah, and usually I'd rather have 5 points extra bid. Like I don't love reflexes that much more than saber throw to pay the extra 5 for it. That's just my personal preference, though.
Unbelievable.
I'm in the saber throw camp very firmly because it gives Dooku the ceiling, like a turn of like really high ceiling, and it gives him Pierce 3, and there's a lot of good things you can do with that one giant attack, and you can also last first and deliver the goods like beyond range 4 to a target. Like, it's a thing, and that really does put the dive turn.
Are you telling me that Pierce 3 is amazing?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So why does the only Pierce 3 character in the game not get played, David?
Because he doesn't have a lot of other good keywords that make him really good.
Lack of surge critical might be
lack of surge crit.
Hard disagree on.
Well, hang on. This is totally apples to oranges for a couple of reasons.
Yes.
We're talking about Vader, and this is a tangent. Vader only gets Pierce 3 meaningfully on enough dice in melee. With Dooku, we're talking about it on that Fear, Surprise, Intimidation, quote unquote, nuke turn, which is 8 dice.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying. I just was pointing it out.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is that it does give you a way to do like a high burst damage ranged attack with Dooku, which he doesn't have like a true double attack card like Son of Skywalker. If you don't take saber throw, it's essentially impossible for him to attack one target with both weapons. So like he's great at consistent damage, but he doesn't have a lot of burst damage unless you do that saber throw, lightning, fear, surprise, intimidation combo. So it gives you a way to do that. I've had entire games where I don't use saber throw once. I've had games where I use it like 3 or 4 times. So, yeah, I view it kind of the same way as like saber throw on Jedi Luke. It's situational, but in the situations when you need or want it, it's really good.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, and I'm going to use the Vader discussion to kind of segue into the next point, because Vader can't get insulated by like 42 meat bags, also known as B1 battle droids. They're so cheap, and that's what kind of makes these expensive commanders in Dooku and Grievous kind of function the way they do, because they can be surrounded by such cheap core units. So for the B1 battle droids, I think that's the best, topic of discussions here is to talk about their heavy weapons, the use of uplinks and stuff like that. For someone that doesn't play droids, I look at the droid army lined up across me, and I'm just like, all right, how can I take away the quote unquote daisy chain? And how can I take away their HQ uplink and stuff like that? So now to hear it from the reverse, how many uplinks do you use typically, Kyle, to keep that chain alive? And what weapons, are you typically using?
So before we talk about weapons, I do want to talk about the chain, because part of playing droids effectively is getting used to like getting in the reflex, the muscle memory of deploying your B1s in a way that chain is not like truly unbreakable, but close to it. And it does limit your, you can't just put your core units spread out wherever you want like other factions can. You're going to be limited in how you can advance. And for me, that starts in, we call it turn 0, but I put deployments in my battle deck that are, essentially allow you to fight from short edge to short edge instead of from long edge to long edge, or diagonally, because I feel like it's much easier in those sorts of deployments to keep your like Civil War style gun line together. And I essentially bid for deployments. That's like the most important thing to me, personally. Now, I know that not everybody feels that way. If you're running staffs, which we might have time to get to later, that might be a little bit of a different calculus. But I like those short edge to short edge deployments because it makes it easier to keep your B1s clumped up together. If you look in, we have a Dooku article recently up on the site that talks about, essentially like formations with B1s, but I call it basically honeycombing, where you overlap. It's important that things like coordinate range are measured many to many, which means you can extend it with cohesion. So I like to overlap my B1s as much as possible, such that each B1 unit is within range of more than one other B1 unit, so that if one of them gets deleted, which can happen, that you don't lose your chain. And then as far as the uplinks are concerned, I usually run 2 just because I like some redundancy. And then often you have, more than one target at the end of your chain that you want to bounce to if you have like B2s or something like that. Essentially any droid trooper unit that doesn't have coordinate is a quote like end of chain unit. So yeah, I like 2 uplinks just for the flex there.
Yeah, I mean, it gives you full control when you need it, and if something happens and something goes wrong, you can tap it then. There's a lot of different uses for the uplinks, I think, and if I ran droids, I probably would run 2 myself. The hardest thing, I guess, is when you do lose a unit, or if you have a unit that loses the daisy chain and then you don't lose the full control on a turn you really need it, that can really hurt. So like you said, the honeycombing is super, super important. Now for heavy weapons, those uplinks kind of roll really well into the. I'm not even gonna bother trying to name the rocket launcher droid, but because
E60R.
there we go, the E60R. So you get some good synergy there. I'm assuming you're running a couple of those, or you tend to at least. You know, as he walks away from the computer. What do you guys think about the E60Rs and the uplinks and the synergy you get out of that?
They're real smooth together. They need to refresh. The HQ uplink needs to refresh. It's just a natural fit to put the two together. A lot of times you see them rolling with two. The usefulness of low impact weapons, like impact 2, impact 1 weapons, is kind of a topic of debate these days. But um, I think it's nice to mix that in. It's nice to have some like very cost efficient response to enemy armor, especially the light armor. For example, the ATRT, which is extremely popular these days in Rebel if you're not running Tauntauns. Um, Low impact weapons like the E60R are also useful sometimes against the other kind of light armor platforms like the T47, for example. When I say light, I mean it has a poor save. And even if it does have cover 2, generally it's attached to a dice pool that's large enough to make that impact 2 meaningful if you're shooting at range 3 at a T47. So it's not really wasted, even if the T47 has ways now to get cover 2. Not as good as critical 1, but still useful.
That's a good segue because I was just going to bring up the sniper. As someone looking across the table, I actually think the sniper is very good. I know that a lot of lists are using like a 1 or 2 of rather than like a crazy 6 of or something like that. But I feel like they slot in very well with the E60R and the E5C. Critical 1 is really good, especially at range 4. I think obviously that pool gets better when you get to range 3 because you're tossing a lot more dice and you can kind of get that critical to really hit along with some other stuff. So I think the most interesting to me with the B1 droids is like the smorgasbord that you have with them. Like I feel like all 3 of the 4 of the heavy weapons, I'm gonna say all, but the radiation gun, a cannon, obviously is not something you see often in competitive. Obviously, but you can find ways to work that in games that aren't competitive, of course. But the 3 of the 4 are really strong in both casual and competitive games. The E5C, the E5S, and the E60R, which is kind of cool to see. I think a lot of the times with all of the other factions, you kind of see like the same heavy weapons here and there. You might see something sprinkled in. So to see 3 heavy weapons get used often is kind of cool.
I mean, I'll just say the radiation gun has a place in skirmish for sure, especially if you're fighting like, one of those big hero units that is so popular in skirmish. Sabine, for example, Dooku is actually pretty popular in skirmish games because he just is such a huge presence, and especially when you cut the board down to 3 foot by 3 foot, it's really hard to escape from him. He finds a lot more play as an aggressive piece. But I think the rad gun has its place in skirmish, but definitely, on an 800 point board, if you're running a gun line, you need to be able to hit at range 4. Like it's just a thing right now with clones and standby sharing. You have to have ways to hit out past range 3. Otherwise, you're just going to get buried.
Yeah, I mean, I think a difficulty for the rad cannon in competitive is that, and you know what, even just running droids typically on an 800 point game, right? And Kyle can correct me if I'm wrong, is that you actually have to move the droids forward from your line, your daisy chain, and you're putting yourself at risk of possibly losing that daisy chain because you're putting yourself forward to get the radiation cannon to go off. And that's like kind of like a risky situation.
Yeah, I mean the radiation cannon is an assault weapon, and B1s are not assault units.
Fair way to put
I'm
it.
glad you brought that up because I actually think that the biggest problem with the radiation cannon is not necessarily that it's bad, but it's just B2s do that better.
Yeah, that's fair. Um, so I guess Kyle, if you have it in front of you, can you give us some raw stats on all these weapons and what we're looking at with droids with numbers here?
Yeah, so the E5C, which is the core set, like standard quote unquote light machine gun, range 3 black dice. If you add that to the B1's pool with their white dice, you're going to average 3 hits, which isn't great. If you compare that to like a Rebel Trooper Z6, Z6 is 3.5. Stormtroopers DLT, these are like the old school core set combos is somewhere in between those two. So it's not great, but it's also only 54 points. And as you lose models, you're shedding white dice. Like your pool is backloaded with those black dice. So even when you lose a couple B1s, which is going to happen, they're still going to pack a punch for you got 4 models left. You're still throwing 3 whites and 3 blacks, which is pretty good, especially if you have a surge token from aggressive tactics. So, yeah, it's fine. It's you're not going to like blow anybody off the table, but it's for 54 points. It's hard to complain about. The sniper rifle, the E5S, is a little bit more than that. When you factor in the critical from surge, you're looking at like 3.15-ish hits. And of course, it has critical 1, so you're slightly more likely to punch through cover. That is 2 more points. That comes in at 56. I don't think that it's necessarily... we won't get into like super detail on the E5 versus the E5S. I don't think it's necessarily like an auto include for 2 more points. It's not as good with aim tokens. It's not as good with surge tokens because you don't tend to roll multiple surges that often. So I like 2 of them. I'm running 2 of them in my eliminations list for Invader League just for the range 4, so that I can strip standbys and stuff. But yeah, I think if you want to take the E5S, you're doing it for the range 4, not for the perceived better damage, because it's not straight better damage. The E6DR has the best dice of all of them because it's red, black, black. So it's a quarter hit more than the E5C, which is pretty good. It benefits from surge tokens, of course. I will sometimes take 2 of those on my uplink units because those units tend to recover a lot anyway. David mentioned this already, but pretty good against armor. And then the rad gun, 2 reds. It's actually like identical to statistically the E5C, but of course you got the poison damage on the back end of that. So yeah, little stat blurb there. We do need a stat of the day drop.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think that battle droids with a heavy weapon are 54 points. I know I've seen it, and it's just crazy because it's it's 7 bodies, heavy weapon, and it's cool. It's cool. I think that it's great that all of these weapons are somewhat viable. I kind of hate seeing droids against the table when they just start to swarm you and you don't know what to do. It happens often, especially when you're playing KP. You're just like, can I kill enough droids so they don't swarm me in the middle? But it's super thematic, right?
Yeah, definitely. You need to throw dice at them. Like it, if you're we've said this on previous episodes, but if you're facing up against the B1 horde, like you do actually need to kill B1s. It kind of feels like a waste of time, but it's not. Like when you shoot them, they die. Just you have to focus on them. But yeah. Anyway.
Well, I mean, you're on the horns of a dilemma a little bit too, because I don't know if we want to segue this far, but like B1s and their cheap wounds are just absolutely punishing versus pierce weapons, which are extremely popular. And so you also need to think about bringing volume weapons for this sort of thing, where it's like, like a flamer or even an RT rotary if you're a rebel player, and I mean, I think Empire versus CIS, it's like the rebel problem that rebels had against Empire writ large. Like if you end up at range 3 of a shore gun line with an aim stack and you're a B1 unit, you're feeling pretty not great about the outcome that's coming your way, chances are.
Yeah, and same with clones. It's you got to protect your B1s. Cover is really important for them. Dodge tokens are not a waste of time on them.
Right, because dodge tokens is similar to Wookiees, right? Like Wookiees and Rebel, they only save on a block, and dodge tokens, in a similar fashion, will sort of cover their weakness in that regard.
Yep. And don't forget, you need 4 models in cover if you got a 7 model unit to have cover. So
which is
Very
lot.
important.
it is a lot. There's a concept we don't talk about too much, but like of space, and there's only so much space on a table, and this is like a real problem for droid players. You have to really look at a table and plan it in advance about how you're going to use all that cover space, because another faction might be able to fit 2 trooper units behind that barricade. You're only going to be able to fit 1, depending on how you do it. So you got to be really good with cohesion and getting cover with cohesion and sort of planning out in advance how you're going to use cover on a table, because you've got 50 dudes instead of 25, and they take up a lot more space.
So I'm sure configuring your cohesion when you stack that barricade is also really important, because you can totally block yourself if you don't cohere correctly and force your unit out of cover without meaning to.
Yep. I've definitely blocked Dooku with B1s. Like, I'll move it with my B1s and I'll be like, oh man, those guys are getting executed after this game for being in the way.
And I bet it's probably like more of a science for droids to figure out which models to take off the table too. Like, you're so used to being like, all right, well, this guy is over here, I can take him off and still have heavy cover. But now you have to like kind of figure out, oh, well, this droid can come off and this droid can come off, and I still get this cover rather than this droid and lose the cover and stuff like that. At least I think it could be tricky. But I guess you can get rid of the mass and just stick to B2s, right? There's another option there with the B2s and go to 3 model units rather than 8 model units or whatever it is. Well, 4 with a heavy weapon, or could also kit them out with the extra B2 and make it a 5-man squad. But at least cohesion's not as crazy, right? So I guess if you're in the middle of a battle on Geonosis, you can just call them up, be like, all right, you Cylon looking guys, just come on in, blast them for me, and go for it. I feel like I haven't seen B2s quite as often as B1s, which is just probably normal for a second corp, other than the clones. So what do we think about B2s here, boys?
I think it's a shame that they're not taking more. I think they're actually quite good, and people really underestimate the value of Armor 1. It's kind of like having a permanent nimble dodge.
And having, it's not kind of, right?
It is. It's a permanent nimble dodge. It's like, and when you go into heavy cover, you have cover 3 because you have Armor 1 stacking with cover.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're 2 health models, which helps as well.
So why don't we see them more? Is it just a matter of cost, or is it a matter of keywords?
I think it's more a matter of, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like droid players, like, you don't want to spend your points in your core units, really. Like, I don't know. Like, how much is 6 fully kitted B1s? Like 300 points-ish, give or take?
Yeah.
After, like, heavies and uplinks?
It's a little over 300, but yeah.
So you've got, like, 500 points of, like, Dooku and BX droids and Staps and Droidekas, if, whatever. But, like, if you're taking B2s as your core, I think that kind of eats into that chunk significantly.
You're right, Zach.
Yeah, I had a glass of whiskey holding up my phone because we're we're on video, and my glass of whiskey is almost empty, and it just kind of fell over with the phone, so you guys no longer can see me on video.
It's funny because on the video, actually, it looked like it was the opposite effect. It looked like you were falling as opposed to the phone falling. It looked like you just kind of like went backwards in your chair out of the floor.
I still have my cat-like reflexes. I cut the glass while still staying on microphone, but not staying on camera because the camera fell. But I did get a little whiskey everywhere. But to the point, to your question, Mike, to get back on track, is I wonder if we don't see them is because they have the lack of the coordinate keyword, which is very, very important.
That's the biggest reason, in my opinion.
I hard disagree. I'm not a droid player, but I think you all need to try to play a few games with B2s. Like, just take 6 of them. Just try it.
Just go to the bag for once. Jeez.
Coordinate. Well, yes, go play the game that the rest of us are playing for once. And then B, like the like coordinate is a big deal, but like AI triggering on them doesn't really matter. If you're at range, if you're in a place where their AI triggers, they're at range 2 and you want to be shooting anyways. Will you miss out on a name token? Sure. They don't really need a name token. I mean, we can go through the stats, but like they're very good even when their AI is triggering.
Well,
I
what's their
think.
base? What's their base heavy? It's at 3 red. Is that the base heavy?
I think so.
Yeah, it's an
So
Dang.
ATST pool. 3
Oh
red,
my
3 white, 3
gosh.
black.
Yeah. So you don't
yeah.
care about AI at all, right?
Well,
Because
I
you're
mean,
gonna
you kind
attack
of
and
do.
move.
You
Oh, do
kind of
you?
do.
Okay.
Yeah. So, um, yes, you attack at range 2 anyway. So if you're triggering AI attack, there's a target at range 2 you're shooting at. That's fine. But you might want to shoot a different target that's not at range 2. Particularly like, I mean, good players will kind of manipulate AI on the opposing side. Like if you have a unit of B2s, like say you're running that 6B2 thing, you're going to present targets to trigger AI to those 6B2s where they can only like see one model or something. And they're going to have to paste, they're going to throw 9 dice at that one model where they'd much rather move slightly deeper into your opponent's lines and throw 9 dice at a full squad. Right. So I think the quote unquote like AI doesn't matter to them is often true, but if you did something like run 6B1s, it would definitely like cease to be true very quickly. I like
I'm
them.
definitely not advocating for not giving V1s order tokens, just to be clear.
Yeah,
Right.
and the second thing is like the face-up orders matter to them because they really want surge tokens, both offensively and defensively. And you can't give them surge tokens from aggressive tactics if they don't have face up. So I actually like B2s also, but as a like a one of, 5B1s, 1B2, and then they're kind of your like linebacker / flex assault unit. It's really nice to have like I ran a variation of this list. I think we actually did a Scoundrels bat rep, me and David, like a month or so ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I basically ran like Grievous, 5B1s. There was a full BX and then also a B2, and just having like 3 separate threats, in that range 2 band was really nice.
It reminded me of the old Luke Leia one fleet lists that were popular in 2019. Reminded me of
Yep.
that a lot, and it
Yeah.
had the same kind of threat profile. Because you'd have Wookiees in one fleet. Well, this is actually just better because you've got a full BX and you've also got a B2 that they have slightly better keywords. They throw more dice. They don't pierce, obviously, but the B1, the BX is pierced, but the B2s are denying cover usually. Um, maybe they have their exhaust weapon to do blast or whatever, but even if you don't deny cover, it's still a crazy strong pool.
Yeah, they hit like a truck once you get them in there. That's for sure.
They're a real assault unit. They're not like a poser assault unit like fleets are, because fleets are courage. They're courage 1, and then they have this like janky keyword called ready. Anyway,
I
Really.
that's
stand
another show
that ready is an excellent keyword.
on Death Troopers.
Mm,
It just requires free standby tokens.
Exactly,
yes.
like
It's
Death
really
Troopers.
it's really the command card that makes the keyword great for Death Troopers, right? Um, I mean, so back to the point of the AI attack, and David, you brought up the other
Yeah.
heavy weapon, which is the B2 Ha, the B2 Ha droid, being range 3. It's a great weapon because of blast, and it has cycle and impact too. But the issue of it, of course, is that the AI attack is more likely to trigger with just that weapon due to range and not having an order. And I could see that being problematic. It seems like great. It's first of all, I'm staring at the art because I don't know droid names, so I figured I'd bring it up on Legion HQ, and the art on this card is like phenomenal. So I kind of think I would play it just because of this card. But I could see that the range 3 AI attack, and you're just like, well, I guess I'm shooting these guys and moving over here, but then I have to cycle before I can really get the actual shot that I want off, which is not the action economy you kind of want, I suppose. So you're probably taking the B2 ACM 9 out of 10 times when you're taking the Battle Droids, I assume.
Yeah, I think the HA has its place. Generally speaking, you won't be leaving them without an order. And I mean, riddle me this, right? I feel like Blast is better than taking an aim token because you
Oh,
guarantee cover denial.
I mean,
So, you
it's
know,
better most
if
of the time.
right, so if you're able to keep an order on, then if you're able to keep an order on and stay in range, recover, shoot becomes a really appealing option. So, you know, it's got its place.
Mike is in here throwing lists into our chat room. He's got General Grievous with strict orders and the Annihilator, which I just realized we didn't talk about the Annihilator being like a staple onto Grievous. By the way, earlier.
Oh, you never run
Yeah,
in without that thing.
you
Never
go,
leave home without it.
you don't leave home without that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And he's got 6 B2 droids with the B2 ACM trooper, and he's got some sniper teams that we're assuming some points on there. But so he's got this 10-act list. Do you think you could run that, Kyle, and have success with it? 6 B2s, General Grievous, some strike teams. But you don't have perfect order control, and you have to go to the bag for once in your life. How do you feel?
I mean, this actually looks pretty interesting. I'm not gonna lie.
No aggressive tactics. It's trash. Flush it.
I feel confident saying that this list is better than any Rebel gun line you could put together.
I don't know if I go that far. I mean, range 2 is really limiting. Like, what are you gonna do against a clone ball?
I mean, you're in range 2 on turn 2. Like, I don't actually think you're missing shooting opportunities. You're just double moving with all of these units. You're going to lose like a squad of B2s, no doubt. But like, the whole point is that you're just shoving 6 units of B2s with heavies in their face and saying you can't deal with all of this.
Yeah, I get the concept. I think that doesn't work as well in practice. Like the lack of aggressive tactics is a big deal. B2s, despite armor 1, are actually like fairly fragile. They're Wookiees. They're 2 wound Wookiees when they don't have aggressive tactics.
True.
6 units of 2 wound Wookiees.
Yeah, but like, yeah, I don't know. I'm a little skeptical.
A lot of wounds.
It is a lot of wounds, but like range 2 on basically your entire army is just super limiting.
I mean, the answer, right, is like you have to math hammer this and say like, is the sacrifice of range worth whatever efficiencies I'm getting from these dice pools and these health pools?
Yeah,
right.
Totally. I mean, the thing is, even if you lose like, let's say you lose like 8 B2 models on the turn it takes you to get in there, all from various units, maybe even the same units. Like, you still have like what, 16 of them left? Like, I don't know. I think it's super lethal.
I mean, it's a fair point. Like, what unit actually beats this thing 1-on-1? Like on a regular basis.
It's so the problem I see with this list is that it's the same problem I had when I was back in the day when I was messing around with that. Sorry about the barbecue flamer list. Like, there's only one mode, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you're in a
True.
situation where you need to defend and hold the ground, you're still going to be operating this list in attack mode.
I mean, it's an armor skew, literally.
Yeah,
it's just
right.
in a different slot.
Yeah,
right.
That's one way of putting it.
Yeah.
It strikes me as inflexible, personally.
Yeah, I'm not actually sure how inflexible it is, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. Anyway, we got some more units to talk about here.
Yeah.
I actually think we should push the tank because A, we did a whole episode on it, but B, it's long and interesting. Do you want to just close out with the support choices here?
Yeah, sure. So where are those droidicas is the quote that I have here because I feel like I haven't seen them in a while. So why is that? I feel like they're underutilized, or do you think that they just need a little bit of a points drop, or is it just the fact that they struggle by not getting orders and not getting use of LTA? I mean, there's a couple different reasons, of course, and not having coordinate like the B2s. So what do you think on those droidicas?
I mean, there's a couple like just structural, just from a competitive standpoint. They're not droid troopers, so not only do they not have coordinate, but you can't coordinate to them from a B1, like you can with the B2s. So that's, you got to give them orders the old-fashioned way via a command card, which is doable, right? Like there are good, quote unquote core box lists with Grievous, or with Dooku, a bunch of B1s and Droidicas, and they're perfectly fine there. It's just, I think, I don't know, it's just a little bit of an awkward slot, structurally speaking, to be like a quote unquote spammable or cheap vehicle, but not a droid trooper, and therefore they don't interact with the coordinate chain.
Yeah,
But
I sort of go ahead.
so no, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say I think that these guys are just like they feel like they're missing a piece to me. Like speeder bikes were and like heavies and Imperials were good because like there are actually decent command cards that go along with them. And I just feel like all the separatist command card availabilities right now, like you don't really want vehicles. I don't know. That's where I'm at. Like I feel like if they had an evasive, yours is 2-pip is evasive maneuvers, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes,
What
it
two
is.
pip?
Yes,
It's been a-
you
it's
get
been a
dodge
while since
tokens and you can cancel crits from dodges. You basically can
Yeah.
outmaneuver.
And then the generic Imperial heavy, where you can flip order tokens back into the
Yeah.
pool.
Pin down.
I think if
Yeah.
like you had those two command cards in a CIS list, I think that Droidecas would be very good.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
tend
it's
to
just
agree.
the separatist kit is just not really set up to support them.
I feel like they should be used more because 2 courage core is really popular these days, and suppressive guns should also be popular somehow when you combine them with sniper fire. Like it should be good to stack, 1 Deca shot and 3 snipers on 1 target and have 5 suppression on that target. Like that should be meaningful, right? It should do something.
Yeah, I mean, I think suppressive is the best part of their card. It's the only suppressive weapon you can take as droids. I like them, other than the fact that they just don't fit in that well with what separatists want to do right now. I think if you want to run them, you do, like in the core box days, I would run them with link targeting array. They have 2 reds and 4 blacks in their dice pool when you got both models, which is great with aim tokens because they're high quality dice and you're going to miss on a couple of them. They also really like surge tokens for the same reason, which is why it's important to get them orders. I will say that it's really nice having 2 models in a vehicle unit like that, and they do explicitly get cover from barricades and things that are the size of barricades. So getting covered with them is pretty easy, unlike most other vehicles. So treat them like trooper units for the most part in those regards. Yeah, I mean, I think they're fine. Like if you're, obviously BX droids aren't out yet. So if you're trying to fill out 9 activations, you're not running like double the fall, which is a Grievous Dooku, a bunch of B1s. It's perfectly solid to make like a Grievous 6 B1s or 1 B2 in there, and then a couple Droidicas. That's totally fine.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. Go for it.
I was just thinking, like, also, I think the big thing that Droidicas had when they came out was their shielding. Like, that was the thing people made a lot of noise about, too. It was like, we have shields that can recharge. It's one of the first units that actually could recharge its own health pool. But I think that Generator 1, which I think is their ability to heal 1 shield per turn, it doesn't matter as much as it used to, because now you have an abundance of tactical and you have an abundance of aim passing and things like that. And so being able to heal yourself for 1 isn't meaningful if you're taking, 4 and 5 damage past cover or whatever. And if you really wanted to do a recharge build, you could take like uplink BXs with shields instead, and then they just get 2 back when you recover the uplink anyway. So I don't know if it's any good anymore. it's great that it can resist Pierce, but Pierce was never the issue. It was big attacks that overwhelmed their shields and focused fire.
Yeah, I mean, like, I do think that they're still pretty decent at soaking one attack.
Totally.
Like, once the shields are down, though, like once that one attack happens, if anything comes in on a follow up, like they're just dead.
They
And
fold. Yeah.
right, and they can take the first phase 2 or arc hit, but it's the second one that kills them.
Right.
And you know, I mean, let's compare that even to like an ATRT. Like an ATRT can conceivably take 3 or 4 hits from full units and survive. Like clearly there's some randomness that goes into that, but you know, statistically you can just overwhelm a Droideka's health pool with large amounts of dice. And to be fair, you can do that with most units, but the Droideka definitely seems built on that premise, and it definitely seems like it folds after the first attack.
It would be different if causing your opponent to shoot the Droideka had value, which I guess it does. Although part of me thinks like I want to kill this thing anyway because it's 100 points. It's easier to kill than a B1 in theory because it's gonna get hung out there and shot to death because my opponent's gonna be aggressive with it. But it doesn't have the staying power, right?
I just want to know why, you know, in the films we see Droidekas like take on 2 Force users at once and be like legit AF, and like I. My Kenobi walks up to these guys and is like, "Okay, you're dead."
The obvious answer is that shield should work against melee, right?
Yeah, I mean Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon see those things roll up and they're like, "All right, we're out of here."
Yeah, they're like, later. And
Oh,
I don't
I'm
know.
sorry. I
Those are
remember what I was trying to say earlier, by the way. So let me just circle back to that point. What I was trying to say is it would be useful if shooting the Droideka had some value that wasn't, you know, it's like they shoot the Droideka so my core don't get suppressed. They shoot the Droideka so my important units don't get suppressed. Like if there was a value in that speed bump there, then that would make the Deca much more palatable. But there is no such benefit.
Well, I mean, so the benefit of the shields is that it protects the Droideka. Like you don't want people shooting your Droidekas because they're a decent, reliable, suppressive damage piece. You'd much rather they be shooting B1s. Typically, what I do with them to kind of get around that problem a little bit is I run them on like a flank, and then I use roll mode the first turn or two to get into a good like side position where once my opponent is in a position to shoot them, they're also dealing with the B1 horde at the same time and or Grievous. So like, you know, in that situation, being able to eat one attack is valuable because if your opponent has to allocate 2 attacks to a Droideka, then they're not allocating 2 attacks to Grievous or your B1s or whoever.
Right.
But
Am
yeah,
I wrong in... Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Am I wrong in thinking that you can reverse it at speed 2 in roll mode?
No, that's accurate.
Okay, so I wish people would do that more.
Yeah, I mean it's super common to like, you know, do a last first with Droidekas, right? You get in there, take a shot, you know, and last activation of a turn, and then the first activation of the next turn, take another shot and back behind some kind of line of sight blocker.
Right, you roll mode out of there, and then if you took any shield damage, you regenerate it, and then when you're back up to some comfortable level of health, you do it again.
Yep.
I do think that it's sort of interesting, you know, Kyle, you were talking about them best being used in a flanking position. I think the trouble with that is that the new support option that is coming out just does that function way better.
You know, you took my segue right out from underneath me. So I was gonna bring it in there and say, you know, to be a flanking unit, there's something called stat riders that are not out in the real world, but they are in the electronic world, as we'll put it. So just a reminder text for everyone: stat riders are 73 points with Agile 1, AI move, coordinate droid trooper and vehicle, cover 1, speeder 1. They're 3 health each, 2 models per, and they roll 3 black with critical 1 fixed front and they move at a speed 3. They are repulsor. Just to give everybody a reminder, as they are not released. But yeah, you look at the face of it, and they're repulsor. They're speed 3. They have agile. That is exactly what you like to see in a flank, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, they also have like coordinate and stuff. Like, I don't know, like that seems really good.
Yeah, they're about 27 points cheaper baseline than the Decas, and they, yeah, like you said, they coordinate, which is massive because we've talked about, most of this episode about how important it is for droids and how they coordinate.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason that if you look at if you're following Invader League Elims, actually the majority of separatist lists have stabs in them, at least 2 stabs. Me and a couple others are sort of the weirdos that are actually not running stabs, and that's because they're good, right? Like they're they're like Imperial speeder bikes, except they can give orders to each other and they have agile. Their save isn't as good, so they're a little bit more fragile when you focus them down. But yeah, they're super flexible. They're great flankers. They don't bust up your chain if they're close enough to it. Yeah, they're a really solid unit.
Well, if they're not close, you just bring command control array and extend coordinate to range 2.
Yeah, or actually like long range comms, I think is, if you've got like a cluster of 3 steps, long range comms is perfectly defensible on them. Give them an order the old fashioned way. And then have the other 2 with, either naked or link targeting array. I've seen a lot of different comms upgrades on these things actually, that are all defensible HQ uplink. Because they got that compulsory removed for the extra action, so they can afford to like move, recover, shoot, kind of a thing. So yeah, it's they're super flexible. I think they're actually the best like speeder / flanking unit right now, that's available
Available in the digital world.
Yeah,
Better
I
than
mean,
Tauntauns.
yeah, we're talking about TTS, right? Like, which
Yeah.
uses anything that's been spoiled.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I like them a lot.
Which, I mean, in today's day and age, TTS is kind of our Lord and Savior. So,
Well,
so if you're playing, all right, maybe not, but
it's the
sorry,
way to
Mike.
play. It's the way to play Legion right now.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, the safest way
Yeah.
to play Legion is the way to put it. So if you're playing TTS, you have the availability to play Stab Riders if you want to. If you're playing the Separatists,
As they do in Invader League. Speaking of Invader League, should we super quick talk about some games, or do we want to just leave them till next week?
We can go through it.
I was gonna
All
say
right.
if we leave until next week, we'll have other games to talk about.
It's true.
That's
we
all
will.
true. They'll have a whole other set of games to talk about by then.
Yeah,
Mike,
and I think Mike's game was like kind of like what we weren't gonna really brush upon, but Mike's game we were talking, before the show, and we thought it was a good idea to bring it up.
Yeah. So first off, just to kind of preface this, David, you streamed this game.
Yes.
So if you want to see the playback, you can go ahead and check out twitch.tv/yavinbase.
Yep.
I imagine it's on your VODs. I think it's actually, I imagine it was a good watch.
I thought so. Yeah, it was a very
Yeah.
good watch. It was action packed, like from the beginning to the end.
I only caught the last half, and it was a super good watch. So
Yeah. So, and I don't say that to like kind of like toot my own horn, because I really was not enjoying the game because I was feeling really dark. Like things were going like a little bit too not according to plan. So I was playing Zyconia. Zyconia is a great rebel player, fantastic guy to play with. He was playing Triple Tawns, Leia Chewie. I was playing my super sweet ARC Trooper list that you can read about on our website at thefifthtrooper.com. And we were playing hostage exchange disarray. And I made a very active choice. Basically, this game boiled down to deployment. And I made an active choice early on because I didn't know where his tauntauns were going to go, and they were all going to get placed after my entire army was on the board that I was basically going to let my hostage just like run back towards my army, and I was going to focus on trying to blow him off the board. The reason I decided that from the beginning of the game was because we were playing Disarray, and I needed my R2 to score in order to win. And I couldn't just like my R2 had to be part of my army and they had to push together. And that was very important to my deployment. And what ended up happening was my hostage unit died, which did not go according to plan. And I kind of had to like deal with a situation that I thought I had planned for well, but didn't. Captain Rex ended up bailing me out because Captain Rex is a boss. And but you know, I basically got hit with a Tauntaun unit on turn 1. I was able to take that Clankers the other Tauntaun unit, and I was put in a stressful position because my hostage was on the ground, not claimed on like turn 3. Because naked rebel troopers killed my phase 2 squad.
Oh, jeez.
And so basically the dilemma that I had here that I wanted to talk about was how to deal with, and I think I did it poorly this game, anticipating where your opponent's going to put units when they're dropping like 2 to 4 units after you've deployed your entire army, which was functionally the problem I had this game. And I think I miscalculated. I did not expect Zyconia to basically say, here's my Tauntaun units, I'm charging you turn 1. He played No Time for Sorrows. I played Take That Clankers. I won the roll-off, so I was able to delete a Taun unit before it hit me, basically. And so, I don't know. I mean, I would love your guys' thoughts on how to handle that situation. Like, I think I did the best I could with the information I had. I think it's really hard on a deployment like Disarray.
My number one tell for situations like this is where is their commander? And do the units in question need orders or don't they?
Yeah, and it was a complicated situation because not only did he get to place all the taunts after I did, but they had a combination of HQ uplinks and comms jammers on them.
Yeah.
So and to be quite honest, comms jammer was very good this game. The issue that ended up happening was he comms jammed my hostage unit. And so not only was it kind of in the middle of the board and kind of out there by themselves, but I couldn't give them an order. They were within range 3 of Rex. Like that was the thing that I could have done, but they were jammed, so I couldn't.
Huh. That's interesting. I only got to catch some bits and pieces, and I did catch that bit, but I didn't realize that was the jammer unit because I was kind of doing a million things while trying to watch. I didn't realize
I'd forgotten that was the jammer. If I'm
well,
recalling.
The issue was that he had 2 jammers in that list. There was a jammer in the middle of my army, and there was a jammer on top of the hostage. I actually had killed the uplink.
Oh, okay. Because I had thought that unit in the middle was the uplink unit.
No.
I'll have to go back and watch.
At least I'm remembering it, like, because I remember asking him, because I remember trying to put an order on that unit, and he was like, hey, this unit is jammed. And I was like,
weird.
Because
right?
it was a very important turn where I was like, I need to issue an order to this unit. And if I recall correctly, he did have 2 jammer units.
He did.
But yeah, because the other one was inside the arcs, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
So I had thought that red and white were the jammers, and that white got killed almost immediately by that arc Clankers alpha. But I could be mistaken.
Yeah, no, I'd have to go and rewatch it, but and maybe we just misread the board and they weren't actually jammed. I don't know. But we definitely had decided that they were jammed. I didn't like double check that it was the right unit. I just kind of took his word for it. So, so that's why they didn't get an order that turn and then died to that rebel trooper. So
would you have done it any differently?
So that's an interesting question. I've been going back over it in my head. Part of me thinks that maybe I should have just hard pushed out into the center of the board with the entirety of my army in R2 and then decided where to take the army after I like collected my hostage. I think that would have been defensible. My issue was that like I felt like I could just keep basically his entire army outside of the Tons in a corner because and I know that this is probably hard not seeing the board, but there's kind of like a little bit of a fortress on the far end of the board on the table we were playing on, and like my clones pretty much could hem him in completely, and if he wanted to go anywhere, so he was going to have to walk into standby zones. And Leia and Chewie were back there, and I thought it was just kind of a good bet. But looking back on it, I do wish I'd deployed more centrally. The issue is there wasn't a lot of cover in the center of the board.
Even though you wish you had deployed more centrally, I think you ended up gravitating to that place, and that ended up being really strong. Because, like you said, they couldn't. The part of his army that was on the north eastern side of you, from your perspective, couldn't walk through you, and the part of his army that was on the northwest, the southwestern side, couldn't link up at any point. And so that was actually great for you to sort of just like cast your army towards the center, and then he's split down the middle and he can't actually connect any of his elements together.
Yeah, and because it was disarray, there was several mistakes that I made. Like I put a phase 1 unit in the far deployment zone, kind of out there to they were just there to like hedge out R2, and I kind of got a little bit greedy and tried to like move and take an open shot against R2, and then they panicked off the board because I didn't set them up properly. Like it was just like his snipers were like facing the other direction, and I thought they would be focused on my army, and then he kind of turned them around and surprised me with that. What really got me was he called it the downtown shot with Leia. He hit them with a coordinated bombardment shot that added the second suppression token.
Right, and that caused the panic.
Yeah,
that was actually a really good use of bombard. I felt.
I mean, he was in a tough spot there, and I think he really used that to kind of leverage his getting out of the position he was in.
It's an interesting problem too on disarray for your list, because what unit do you throw away? Do you throw away the phase 1 or do you throw away the arc strike? I think the phase 1 was the right call.
100% of the time. The arc strike's just too valuable. I think that there are I mean, all right, I shouldn't say 100% of the time. There are probably situations where it can be the arcs. I actually think that sometimes it's R2, right?
Yeah.
Like it's, I've got blast off in the list, and I think a lot of times you can put R2 in that far deployment zone and he's just kind of a free scoring unit. But the issue here, but you only can really do that if you're deploying last or close to last, right?
Right.
And when there's 3 Tauntauns yet to deploy, you can't deploy R2 on its own, or you'll just lose them.
That's just
And
bait,
Sorry, go ahead, Zach.
I was gonna say, you put R2 in that zone, and those 3 Tauntauns, if you have to go down, that's just Tauntaun bait. Like they're just gonna go kill R2.
Right, like prevailing wisdom says you stack one zone and then throw a sacrificial unit in the other one and pray that unit lives, generally speaking. But Zyconia went for the even split, which I think that was a mistake.
It definitely forced me into some hard choices, and it was the reason my hostage unit died.
Also true.
So I mean, I'm not sure. The other thing was that like my sacrificial phase 1 unit should not have died. It should have just stayed behind. There was a building in that deployment zone that they could have just stayed behind, and then they could have ran out and meleeed R2 when it was time to do the thing, which was what the plan was. I just got overly anxious and greedy and pulled the trigger early, and it kind of bit me in the butt. So
can we just talk about blasting off onto the top of a building to keep the Tauns from ramming R2-3PO until the very last? That was genius. They couldn't actually break the health pool once you were up there with the dodge.
Yeah, I mean, on turn 5, I was just sort of looking at it, and I was like, well, there's nothing in his army that can do 6 wounds to R2 if he's on top of that building. Like, it's literally statistically impossible. And I know he's played both his 1-pips. I'm just going to play Blast Off and elevate him on top of terrain, and the game was just over at that point.
That's what you got to do.
Yeah, I mean,
games.
I don't want to get into an R2's tangent, but Inconspicuous is just silly.
Well, it was inconspicuous and a hostile environment.
It was both of those things.
Yeah.
But like the fact that I like could elevate R2 and just be like, you can't shoot him, and even if you could shoot him, you couldn't kill him. It was just like it was
Yeah.
way too many obstacles to overcome.
It just feels horrible, but hey, it's awesome. At the same time, it's nice that R2-3PO have such a huge impact on the game. They're not just some, piddly secondary unit that's just there for like window dressing,
R2 is the hero of Star Wars. I don't care what anybody says. He literally is the guy that saves like the D&D
Yeah.
party every movie. So it's only right.
Fix the hyperdrive, hack the terminal in Bespin, you name it.
Hacks the terminal on Endor, like
Star even.
dude does it all.
He stops the trash compactor in New Hope.
Yep. I mean, like he's the secret hero of Star Wars, and he deserves his rightful place. Kyle, how's your game go?
It was fun. It was against an Empire Iden gun line. Talked about Kotick's list last week. Basically, it's Iden, Krennic, a couple of Death Troopers, a couple of snipers, and some shores. Very good at killing things at range. My plan going in was to try and avoid a firefight, which I was partially successful. I got kind of clapped on the tactical strike turn. Dooku took a couple wounds on the tail end of that turn, 3 wounds actually, on the last 2 activations of that turn. So I was, there's actually a pivotal moment going into, I don't remember whether it was turn 3 or 4, but basically Dooku was at range 2 of the cover piece that, the line of sight blocker that I've kind of like identified for him. And there was also a unit of Death Troopers basically in between point A and point B. And the same one that had just done wounds to him on the previous turn. And I played Fear, Surprise, Intimidation that turn just for priority. He played deploy the garrison for the standby. So I ended up, which was a good play, prevent Dooku from getting to that spot. I ended up activating the full BX unit instead. The beauty of Separatists is you can play a 1-pip and then activate basically whatever unit you want if you have your chain set up correctly. So I activated the full BX. They rolled in there against the Death Troopers and they killed 4 Death Troopers in one shot. And that removed like the immediate threat to Dooku. So he was able to get into that safe zone, and it was on payload basically. And it was set up such that the 2 payloads would have to cross paths at that point. So it kind of went downhill from there. Dooku controlled that spot, and I was able to take it. But there was a pivotal moment there where Dooku was in a bad spot and could quite have possibly died if not for those heroic commando droids. So I don't know if there's like any huge takeaways from that game. My plan going in was to just set up a situation where we were fighting over a spot, like a specific spot, so that I could leverage Dooku's abilities and not make it just like a war of attrition. And that's more or less what happened. So he was very close to killing Dooku though before I set that up.
Yeah, I mean, as someone that loves watching streams, I love when there's like that moment, and that like BX droid shot was like that moment. Like those DTs were in a good spot, not just for the standby, but just in general, they were in a really good spot to kind of hedge Dooku out possibly. Obviously Cunning and the 1-pip, helped you out big time. But then those BX just like carved them, and it was like wow. Like those are the moments when you're watching a game that are fun to see, like those dice pools and doing damage to like high save units, and you're like, oh well, maybe the DTs will save big here and they'll only take a wound or two, and then but blanks happen. And it was just kind of I like seeing those dice rolls. At least it's just how I feel. I also realized that I was on mute for like most of Mike's battle rep and did not realize that until now. So I pulled a David a little bit there.
So any other Invader takeaways?
I've gotten a lot better mic mute crap, Zach. I'm so good now.
You have gotten much better.
Yes, no more.
Yeah.
more.
So when do you play Stevens, Mike?
I'm playing Stevens tomorrow night.
Which will be tonight when this cast airs.
Yes. So tonight, at 7, I think Eastern. I'm not sure who's going to be streaming it. It is Republic on Republic, but it is not a mirror match. Technically, at least.
Yeah, it's Rex Star versus Arc Star, basically, right?
There we go. So it'll be interesting. It's going to be a lot of red save. Save stuff going on. David's over here rolling his eyes. It's like red save surgeon units.
Yeah, I'm just I don't know. I'm not over it by any means, but it's sort of like I wish I could do that. I mean, I can, I guess, if I switch factions.
There you go. Problem solved.
Boom.
It's going to be a lot of green tokens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are going to be a lot of green tokens. That is accurate.
You just call that side of your board the green room when you stack all the tokens on all the spent tokens up. Didn't you do that during your game? You like stacked them all up and we counted it was like 21 aims or something like
29.
that.
29.
29.
And that doesn't include the ones I deleted.
True. So it's probably more than 29. I have a vague memory of a card called Coordinated Fire back in the day. I remember when we thought the aim generation from that card was a problem. Anyway, I'm going far afield here.
It's okay. I just would like to point out that 29 aim tokens is really not that unrealistic, considering that assuming that your 4 units with tactical, which are Rex and the 3 arc units, trigger tactical once a turn, which means they move once a turn, you're generating 20 aim tokens over 5 turns.
Yeah. So the lesson here is don't try to outshoot clones ever. That's the lesson.
I'm not sure that's true. I think that there are ways to do that. I think Rebels are very uniquely positioned to do that.
Okay, yes. Yeah. There's a chance.
No, I'm serious.
I think Rebels have the best anti-Garless right now that exists.
Probably. I just haven't played it.
But that's a topic for another show.
Yeah, that's another show.
Yeah. All right. Well, so this was Droids 101 with some brief Invader tangents. You guys got anything to plug before we peace out here?
Yep. Twitch.tv/YavinBase. Watch VODs from the last week of games, and if you don't catch them when you listen to this episode, they'll probably be on the YavinBase YouTube channel. And that's all I'm going to plug.
You can check out Dashes TV, check out fifthtrooper.com. I threw an article up there about my Arc Star this last week, so check that out. You guys got anything?
No, we're not technological sound like you guys, so we don't stream.
I don't know. I think you guys are a lot busier than us, I think, at this point.
I think so.
Yeah.
To be
Yeah,
fair.
the dad life and closing on a house on Friday. So
Yeah,
busy. Yeah.
You're really
Kids
busy.
will do that, you know?
Yeah.
Well, good luck, man. Closing on a
thanks.
house is a big deal.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's close this out. We are the Notorious Scoundrels. I'm Kyle.
I'm Mike.
I'm David.
And I'm Zach.
See you next week.